Good morning. Welcome to Escoffier Line Culinary Academy. My name is Chef Cesar. Today I'm going to be making a very classical French soup, which is a French onion soup, its name implies. And lately it's been become really popular with French cuisine in the United States. And now, I mean, you can go out, you can see pretty much this onion soup in every menu in every restaurant. You know, and sometimes it's really, actually it's very easy to make. I'm going to be showing you how to do the soup. You only need a very few ingredients and just you need to follow the proper technique of making the soup, and you're going to end up with a wonderful tasting soup. We're going to start by turn my heat down here. Slicing some onions. You need to slice some. I'm using some yellow onions, with Spanish onions that we call them. You want to slice them very thin, and this is very easy to do, as you will see in a little bit. You want to cut all the stem off because you want the slice to fall off very easy. We tell you to leave the stem on when you do the slicing for the diced onion. We want to cut it all off right now. Then we're going to slice them very thin. Be careful. You need about 2 pounds of onions to make the recipe I'm doing right now, and these onions are pretty big. So if you have this big onions, 2 will be enough. And I already went ahead and started browning my onions. You want to start them at low heat. You want to get them nice and caramelized. They're going to become very sweet. This is where you're going to get a nice flavor to your soup. You can also roast them in the oven if you want. It's up to you. You just want to put them in a bowl, put some clarified butter, toast them up, and put them in the sheet pan, and roast them in the oven. But again, you can also do them in the pot like I'm doing right now. And it's going to take about 40 minutes to get them nice and caramelized. You want to get a real nice brown color on your onions. This is where the flavor is going to come from. They're going to become really sweet. It's a caramelize. And you want them to to break up like this. You want them to slice pretty thin. As you can see, they might make your eyes water, but again, you're going to get used to. As you can see, they break up. That's why I was saying to cut the stem off. That way you don't have them stuck to each other. And I'm using today a beef stock. You can also use a veal stock, or you can just use a beef stock as well. The recipe calls for a half and half chicken and beef stock, but I went ahead and changed a little bit because there's so many different variations out there for recipes for this soup. And I just went ahead and did just plain beef stock that I made. And this is a good way of using your beef stock that you make at home for your assignments too. So there's so many different uses you can have your beef stock for. Okay, let's see, it's nice. So this is where you want to have some nice thin sliced onions. And over here I got my onions cooking in the pot very slow. You want to keep the flame low, you don't want to burn them too quick. So like I said, it's going to take a little bit to get them nice and caramelized. And keep it nice so you toast them around. The rest of my ingredients, I got here some thyme I'll put it on later on. I'm going to add a little bay leaf. Also, I'm going to be making some croutons. This is to top my onion soup with some Swiss cheese. You can also add gruyere cheese, which is it's a nice cheese to melt over the soup when you bake it. It's the traditional way of making it. You don't have to have the cheese if you don't want it. Just make some croutons to go on the soup, and we're going to bake it in the little oven we got back here. So again, we're going to keep caramelizing our onions until they become nice and brown. And these yellow onions work the best because they're nice and sweet. You don't want to use red onions because they turn a little brownish when you saute them. So this is a nice, they're also called Spanish onion as well. So you can use these onions because, like I said, when you cook them, they become nice and sweet, and it's going to give a nice flavor to your soup. Along with I got some beef stock I got here. So this is going to be my liquid for the soup. And again, there's only a few ingredients that you need. I got some sherry here. You can also use some brandy if you like. I mean, like I said, there's so many different recipes out there. Just what you think works better for you. This is a very simple recipe, but again, it's a very tasty soup that we're going to be making here today. And you got to have some patience. You got to just gonna slowly caramelize your onions. That's the key to have a nice, tasty soup. You don't want to, rush them. They're going to be burned. So again, if you want to do it in the oven, like roast them in the oven, make sure that they're nice and caramelized. You want to check them, and that way you can finish up your onions in the pot. Once they're kind of halfway caramelized in the oven, you can throw them in the pot and finish it off like I'm doing right now. For this, I use about 2 ounces of clarified butter that I did ahead of time. You can also use some oil if you want, but butter gives it a nice sweet flavor as well too. As you can see, they're very nice and starting to get brown over here. They've been on for about 15 minutes, and I had it on low. If you have an electric stove like this one, probably number 5 would be a nice way to start at. If you have a gas stove at home, you can use a medium heat or a low heat to begin with. Once it starts to the liquid starts to evaporate, they're going to start to caramelize like you see right now. And this is a wonderful soup. You can save it, use it next day or a couple days later, and the flavor is going to even intensify a bit more because all the onion flavor is going to come together. Like any soup that you make, if you use it next day, it's going to be even better. So, the same thing goes for this onion soup. And this is an ancient soup, it's been around for so many years, but like I said before, it has become very popular here in the States with the, French cuisine movement in the later years. So this has become a very, very popular soup, and as you can see, it's a very easy process to make your soup with very few ingredients. They smell really, wonderful right now. Now you don't want to cut the onions too thick, otherwise you're going to end up with some really thick onions, and you want to have them nice and thin like I did here, like this. It looks really nice. So you want to have them like that. Be careful not to cut them too thick, so otherwise you're going to have big chunks of onions in there. Now I'm going to add a little just a little bit, not the whole thing. Kind of to deglaze the pan, so everything at the bottom is like the brown and nice flavor. We're going to deglaze it so it comes off, and then we're going to go for a little bit more so it starts to reduce. Let it go until some of this liquid evaporates, and we want to scrape the bottom so all the flavor is in there. And this time I want to add some of my dry thyme. You can also use fresh thyme if you have some. You want to wait until everything, pretty much it reduces down and it becomes nice and brown again. And then we're going to add the rest of our stock and, our sherry or brandy if you have, whatever you want to do. Also, I'm going to add a little bit of sherry to cook some of the alcohol off, not the whole thing, just half. And again, you can use brandy too. Brandy works really nice with the soup as well. Sherry is a nice, sweet, wine. Also, I'm going to be making some nice croutons to top our soup off. I got some French bread here. Cut a piece off, and then you can make some nice croutons using this piece of French bread here. You can be making the croutons, at the same time that you're making the soup as well. And in one more minute, I want to be adding the rest of the stock, so the soup, sits there and cooks. You want to kind of simmer for a while. We want to make some nice croutons. They're going to go on top of our soup. We're going to bake it. And this makes a wonderful, soup for a cold winter day. And when you make these croutons, you want to, if you want to do some olive oil or you want to do some butter, to brush them so they bake real nice. Feel free. I'm going to use some whole butter for today with my croutons. You can always use clarified butter as well. I think we have a question over here from some.
Is that cooking sherry?
Yes. The question was it cooking sherry? Yes, it's a cooking sherry wine. It's very inexpensive. You can buy pretty much in any liquor store, and that's what you use. It's nice and sweet, so it's going to give your soup a nice sweet flavor. Sorry for the interruption. We had some technical difficulties, but again, I was talking about the croutons. I put them in the toaster oven, and I took them out. I want to flip them over because they're nice and crispy on one side, but this side is soggy. So you want to do the same thing. Put some more butter, brush some butter in there, some cheese, and if you want some paprika like I did here, and finish them off on the toaster oven. So that's what I'm doing right now, and our soup is getting ready to be done there. So you want to put them back, you want to have a nice and crispy croutons because otherwise it's soggy to begin with, and they're going to soak a lot of liquids from the soup. And here we have our soup starting to boil already. It smells wonderful. If you want to let it boil for about 10-15 minutes, kind of simmer, that way all the flavors come together. And it's got a nice color from your nice stock that we had. Now I'm going to add the rest of the wine. I put a little black pepper. And before you add salt, you got to taste, because sometimes, it depends if you know how much salt you like to eat in your diet. I know salt is necessary for life, but again, some of us, have some issues with salt. But again, try to taste it before you add some salt. Mine is a little more salt, so I want to add a little more. And you want to let it simmer for another 10 minutes or so. And again, I'm going to take my croutons out of here. Just need a little bit more. One more minute in there. And as you can see, the soup's coming to a boil. Have it down. And it's going to simmer for a little bit more. Then, from there, it's ready. You can serve it the way it is, or you can, cool it off and save it for next day. You can make the soup a day before if you're going to have a family reunion, whatever. You can start prepping, like I said, a day before, and it's going to be even better the next day. So I'm going to turn it down a little bit so it just simmers for a few more minutes here. Then we're going to end up with a nice soup here. Take my croutons out of here. can see it nice and toasted. Put them aside. I believe we have a question over here. Yes.
What type of salt do you use? Sea salt, kosher salt, table salt?
The question was, what type of salt did I use for the soup? I use some kosher salt right now. See, the grains are pretty big. You can use any salt if you like. Table salt, sea salt is a great salt because, you know, as we all know, it has a very unique flavor because every salt has, you know, has the minerals and gives it the food a different taste. I really like to cook with some with sea salt myself, but today I use some kosher salt. As you can see, our soup is boiling really good here now. I'm going to turn it down. Now I'm going to, you know, bake some soup in this little bowl. Or a cup, I should say. You want to put one of these croutons in there. As you can see, it's going to soak a lot of liquid. Put some Swiss cheese or Gruyere cheese. Sprinkle some Parmesan on top, and we're going to bake it. If you got, you know, can bake it in the oven, or if you have a salamander, it goes really quick. You want to get a nice caramelization of the cheese. It's going to start to bubble, and it's going to have a, you know, great taste. Or you can have it without the cheese. If you don't want cheese, so you know don't need cheese, you can, you know, have the soup without any cheese, which is perfectly fine to eat too, because, you know, that way you don't get sick, and you can still make some croutons, you know, without the cheese. Just some you can add some garlic if you want, or, you know, a little butter, and that's all. Just fresh herbs if you prefer. So you don't really have to have the cheese, but that's, you know, the classical way of, you know, doing the soup with some melted, you know, Gruyere or Swiss cheese that I just did now. So our soup's still simmering here, but I wanted to show you that. And cheese is melting nice. Just want to wait until it browns, you know. And we have another question over here, Seth.
Could you use Marsala instead of sherry, or would that be too sweet?
The question was, can you use Marsala wine for the soup instead of sherry? And my answer is, Marsala is a very sweet wine. It might make your soup too sweet because the onions are already very sweet when you caramelize them like that, because we're using, like, say, Spanish onions, and they are very sweet, you know, as they are, especially when you caramelize them. All the sugars kind of, you know, come together and all the liquid evaporates, and so it might be too sweet. But you can try it. I mean, anything's possible. You might, you know, go a little less. You know, they use the dry Marsala, but don't use too much. But again, you know, you can also use brandy, like I said before. But it's just up to you, you know. As you can see, it was very easy to make. There's very few ingredients that go into the soup. It's one of the easiest soups to make. If you have everything ready to go, as you can see, you just need some patience to get your onions nice and caramelized. We have another question over here.
Can you use Parmesan cheese, and what type of cheeses would you recommend?
The question was, can you use Parmesan cheese? Or what kind of cheese I recommend? Well, to top off the soup like I did now, you need some like a sliced cheese. You can do Parmesan if you just want to put a crouton and put some Parmesan cheese on top. That's fine. But, you know, Swiss cheese or Gruyere cheese work the best with the soup because the flavors go really well and they melt really nice. So you want to have a nice melting cheese on top. This is going to give your soup a nice, you know, brown color when you bake it. It's almost ready over here. Any more questions out there?
How much salt did you use? When I go to a restaurant, soup always tastes very salty.
The question was, how much salt do you use? Because she said when she goes out to the restaurant, the soup is very salty. You know, the thing is, I use, you know, like a pinch of salt. You know, because the stock was already, you know, I added some salt. But again, in restaurants, sometimes they leave it in the steam table too long and it evaporates. That's the reason why, you know, it gets salty like that. And sometimes, you know, it does. I've seen it happen, you know, because they use like maybe a beef base. They, you know, get salty once, you know, it starts to evaporate. And the main reason behind it is because sometimes the soup stays, you know, on the steam table and evaporates, and sometimes the servers or the cooks don't pay attention, and that's why sometimes it stays salty like that. But I use just like a pinch of salt, and like I said before, you want to taste the soup before you put any salt to it, and that's what I did. So I very little salt again. My soup is almost ready here to take out. In 1 more minute, I want to have a nice caramelization on top of the cheese, so it's bubbling, but you want to have a nice and crispy top. And like I said, Swiss cheese or Gruyere cheese works very well. Some places they even use provolone, but you want to have a nice, strong flavored cheese. Gruyere works the best. We have another question over here.
How long can you store the soup for in the refrigerator?
The question was, how long can we store the soup in the refrigerator? Well, like I said before, you can do it for about up to 4 days, as long as you cool it off properly before you put it in the refrigerator. You want to, put it in an ice bath. And like I said, it's going to taste even better after a couple of days, but no more than 4 days. Because, the onion is going to start to break down, and you can tell when the soup's been in the refrigerator for too long. When you heat it up, it kind of, breaks down and it can go very mushy. You want to have a little consistency of the onion still when you reheat your soup. Okay, this I want to take out because my oven's acting a little funny, but again, you could add, leave it a little longer, and you could have, this a little more browner. But as you see, I melted the cheese all the way, and you would, be careful because it's very hot. When you grab this, make sure you grab with a mitten for the glove, with the glove mitten, or towels. I'm used to this heat, but again, you're at home, you want to be careful because it's very hot. And myself, I did it for so many years, so your hands kind of become used to grabbing hot stuff. But again, don't try that at home because it's very it's very hot. And again, this is an easy soup to make, like you see. And I want to thank you for being here with me this morning. I'm sorry for the little technical difficulties we had. I'll see you next week with another recipe to do.